Welcome to the American Academy of Grief Counseling's videogram on grief of a lost pet. And as pet owners, this is one of our greatest fears of losing our pet and not knowing if our dog or our cat is safe or if they're hurt or injured. And it's a very traumatic feeling, and it can emit numerous emotions throughout, just like anyone who is missing someone. It's the same type of grief. So POWs or a missing child, those are very high level losses, and they can emit great emotion of despair and also a very unresolved type of grief, a very what we refer to also as an ambiguous grief, where there is no resolution to the loss. And this forms a variety of complications. So families that lose a child to kidnapping or lose a child to or lose a family member due to war, these have serious implications in not allowing the person to resolve their grief. The same is true for individuals who lose a dog or a cat. There is an inability to resolve the loss because no one knows where your pet is. And of course, it's a disenfranchised type of loss because many individuals may look to dismiss it as it just being a dog or a cat, when in reality, to many, the dog or a cat is an individual's family, is an individual's very children themselves. And the fact that their dog is missing leads them into an unresolved state of grief with ambiguity at every corner. Where is my pet? Was he stolen? Or was he hit by a car? Was he found? Is he hurt? Does he need me? And these feelings can torment someone who is missing something. There'll be a myriad of emotions and emotional swings that oscillate from hope to despair. And if one continues in one direction, it can become toxic in any extreme. If the hope is good, but it eventually become toxic if one carries on hope for years and years and years. Likewise, despair can become toxic if one gives up too soon or falls into a state of despair and never comes out of it. Additional emotions that might be associated with this type of unresolved grief, besides hope and despair, are guilt. Perhaps the person feels guilty for leaving the door open, or maybe the person regrets the last thing they did with their pet or said to their pet. Maybe they were upset with their pet over something, and then the next day the pet gets loose. So individuals can feel a lot of guilt regarding the loss of a pet. Blame is another toxic emotion, where one may blame another person for the loss of the pet, might not speak to the other person, or have a deteriorating friendship because that person mistakenly left the gate unlocked and the pet got loose, or the person was watching the pet and something happened. So these emotions are important to experience, but they can also become toxic, and they're all part of the dynamic of an unresolved grief and an ambiguous grief in itself. So there are maladaptive ways to cope, which are bad, and there's healthy coping methods. Maladaptive coping would involve individuals who go into such a state of despair that they cannot even leave their home. And some of them refuse to leave their home for fear of missing the return of the pet. An unsettlement can come upon them anytime they hear a bark or a meow, thinking that might be their pet. They might experience sleep disorders. They might be unable to move forward and love another animal. So the coping turns into, I cannot leave my home. My pet might come back. I don't know. And that's how they look to try to find some peace, that if they're home, maybe the pet will come. And there we see that toxic hope emerge in the story itself, or the toxic despair fall into the story itself, where an individual falls into a state of depression and is unable to, again, to find any interest in life itself. So maladaptive coping really involves not being proactive. It involves falling back, shelling up, and so forth. Healthy coping, though, looks for the first few months has a reserved optimism, a reserved type of hope in trying to find the pet. And if the pet is not found through the phases of grief that one will experience, one is eventually able to move forward to some extent, that maybe they find peace through social networking about lost pets and helping others find lost pets. Maybe they take upon a social awareness campaign against animal abuse or donating to animal shelters themselves. And we see this very common also with individuals who lose a child or who lose a family member to a war, POW awareness, or also lost child awareness. Things of that effect is how they take their energy and cope. So someone who might lose an animal, a dog or a cat, might do something very similar. So how do we find our pet if it does get lost? Because it happens to almost everyone temporarily, and it's a terrifying feeling, just the thought of never finding one's pet. And as an owner of 2 dogs, Siberian Huskies, I've experienced that as well, where a dog is missing for a few hours, and those are terrifying moments. I feel like the whole world below you has been pulled from you, and there's no foundation to even walk on, and you're just almost feel completely and totally helpless, but you're just pushed forward out of love to find your pet despite any frantic feelings that are circling in you. You don't have time to really reflect on them. You have to find your pet to have that happy ending. And I've had situations where it's been a couple hours to at most a week. And those are terrible, terrible, terrible feelings to have. So the first few hours are very critical. Finding friends and family to search, asking strangers or people in the neighborhood, no matter whom, checking and posting to social media. One of mine was lost, and I actually asked someone on a bike riding by if they had seen my dog, and he actually said, "Oh, I just looked on my Facebook and someone said they found a husky." So that was very, very lucky on my part. A lot of divine providence in that to be able to find my dog that way. But individuals post on social media, so you should be also asking on social media. Calling all the vet offices and animal clinics in the whole Tri-County area. So when someone who finds your pet maybe takes your pet in, they are all on alert for this particular dog to be brought in or this particular cat to be brought in. Posting rewards, whether it's on a telephone pole or on social media, making a newspaper ad as the days go by. So ways of the 21st century with social media are great, but you can also refer back to the 20th century. You got to put your hands into every pot that you can find if you're trying to find someone that you love. And with that is that initial optimism that comes with it. There's also prevention. Many say prevention is the best medicine, and preventing the worst outcome understanding your breed. Some breeds have hunting instincts and run. Other breeds have zero ability to find their way home. Some breeds need to be left on a lead or have a fully fenced yard. I've always wished I had a dog I could just throw the ball to outside and he would run right back. But I have Siberian Huskies. They have a strong instinct to run. If they see a squirrel, they have that instinct to run towards that. So again, know your breed. Know what your breed does, whether it's dog or cat. Other tips, collar with full information. You can even put a tracker on the collar, but you want to make sure they have their full information. But what if the collar falls off? Ensure that your pet has been electronically chipped with information. Also, when walking your dogs, be sure to purchase adequate walking gear or harnesses for that particular breed. Some breeds pull more and they need a stronger harness. Also, if you have a dog or a cat, make sure your neighbors know your pet, and make sure when you're walking, let the pet know the neighborhood, especially with dogs. Let them mark the area so they know how to possibly get home. Teach them how to get home when you're walking them. Direct them to go home. And if they do ever get off lead, Work with them on commands, maybe in the back fenced yard, with rewards for coming. If they run, if they come back to you immediately and you give them a treat, reward that. So if they do get loose, they know to come right back to you. And of course, proper securing of home and awareness, fenced backyard, locked doors, communication with other family members about being aware that you don't leave the door open as you walk out. So these are all ways to prevent that worse nightmare. Now, again, my sympathy for those who have lost their dogs or their cats that have never returned. I'm sure that the first months was difficult. And I'm sure every anniversary is difficult, remembering the loss of a loved one. And I'm sure there's been ways to learn to cope with that loss and to move forward with that loss. But that ache will always be there. But I'd like to share one nice story, maybe a happy ending. There was a husky that we found loose one time, and we put everything in the paper. We blasted social media. No one ever claimed this dog, and he ended up living with us for another 8 years or so, and he lived a happy life. So there is that condolence where sometimes your pet does find someone and someone takes care of him, even though he never makes his way or her way back to you. So you got to have some sort of peace, some type of hope that something nice happened. And remember, once they do pass away after so many years, they do cross the rainbow bridge, whether they're with you or not, and you will see them again. Again, we are the American Academy of Grief Counseling. We offer a pet loss grief support program. Below is the link. Our phone number is 330-652-7776, and our email is info@aihcp.org. I'd like to thank you for listening and have a good day.